call in throughout the day and just vent and like cry. Like it was one of the most surreal days I've ever experienced. Like it was one of those things where you just walk around, no one. It should be like a holiday. And it really should be like a Atlanta only holiday where everyone who lived through that gets to take that day off in just remembrance of what happened that previous night, because I will never forget walking around. Like it was one of the eeriest days I've ever experienced.
Imagine being on the wrong side of a historic comeback. That's crazy. Go Jags, brother.
I can't stand this. Anyway, speaking of the Jags, JP, is Fred Taylor a Hall of Famer?
100%.
Make the case.
Doubt. When you look at the numbers for Fred Taylor, I'm going to pull them up. Like, Fred Taylor's career numbers are insane. I think when you look at, of course, like, there's going to be like, oh, he played in Jacksonville. Like, no, he was legitimately one of the best running backs in the league throughout his time, like, in Jacksonville. So, for his career, 11,695 rushing yards, 66 rushing touchdowns. He also added on 95 receiving touchdowns. That's insane. Like, that's insane numbers when you talk to everybody from that era. You talk to the Ravens from that era, and you talk to the guys who they talk about the players who they just had a terrible game against or a terrible time against. They'll say Fred Taylor. Fred Taylor, Jimmy Smith, both of those guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I will continue to stand on that table until I die. Those are the two players I will bang the table for, like, until the end of my days. Both those guys.
How did he only make one Pro Bowl? Who was he competing against? Who was he getting who was he missing out over? Like, who kept getting in over Fred Taylor as a Pro Bowler?
I don't know who would have been that. Like
Curtis Martin?
Career, like Marshall Faulk, Curtis Martin, Jerome Bettis. Between like 2000 and 2003, Jerome Bettis maybe. And like Willie Parker.
Willie Parker.
Frank Gore. I'm just naming other running backs from the 2000s that come to my mind.
LT.
Steven Jackson.
Yeah.
Maurice Jones-Drew.
Maurice Jones-Drew was on the team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like once like 2007, 2008 rolled around, that became the dude.
Did y'all watch how old were y'all when the David Garrard in Pittsburgh game happened?
I was in third grade.
What was that, 2007?
2007. That game broke my heart. Mike Tomlin's first year as head coach, Mike Tomlin. And the Steelers almost completed the comeback. 31-29, I think was the final score of that game. And Ben threw an interception to Reggie. Was it
Nelson?
Reggie Nelson. Yeah, to end the game.
That's my guy. I was 7 years old at the time, so maybe
first grade,
second grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
We won't talk about how old I was when this happened. We'll skip right over that one.
That was a painful loss.
That was when you know what's weird though? It's stuck in my head. Like I could tell you all about that game. Like I remember sitting in my living room watching that whole game from start to finish and being really, I remember like, I think annoying my family where I'm like, I don't know, the Jags, like they're a Florida team, like going up to Pittsburgh in the cold. I don't know how this is going to go.
One of my favorite moments as a Jags fan, the 2017 team going in and putting 40.
The Jags have been such a thorn in my side. Like every 10 years, they just piss me off.
5 touchdowns against the Steelers in the playoffs. Out-dueling Big Ben was just
okay. First of all, no, he didn't. Miles Jack returned a fumble for a touchdown to make it 14-0 early on. Ben Roethlisberger outdueled Ben Roethlisberger that game.
It was a beautiful moment. They allowed a fullback touchdown, and the fullback just literally ran right up the seam, and Blake Bortles threw it to him. He was wide ass open. It was
the day after that game, I was team fire Mike Tomlin because he decided to do an onside kick north of the 2-minute warning, and the Steelers had all 3 timeouts. Had they not done that, that touchdown doesn't happen, and they might win that game. And he was horrible clock management.
Well, glad it didn't. Look, man, that.
And they fired Todd Haley instead.
That and the regular season game where they picked off Big Ben 5 times and he started contemplating retirement.
Dude,
that was just bliss to me.
This is Ben's worst game of his career that year.
It was so funny. I laughed my ass off.
So
didn't get decimated by Dalvin Smith.
The first time that the Jaguars broke my heart, it was the year that the Steelers won Super Bowl 40. So it would have been 2005. Ben was injured in the Chargers game like the week before. So Tommy Maddox is starting. The game goes to overtime. Antoine Randall returns the overtime kick to like the 10-yard line. Maddox fumbles the snap. He falls on it. He fumbles the next snap, and the Jaguars get the ball, and they go and win.
Fumbling 2 snaps in a row is horrendous.
That's Tommy Maddox's career in a nutshell.
That feels so bad. That might be like one of the worst things like to ever do. Like not just fumbling a snap, but fumbling it twice. Like it very much reminds me of that long snapper last year during college football. I think it was like Division III. He oversnapped. Like he oversnapped like 4 straight times. And it resulted in points for the other team every time. Like, dog, you got one job. Like, literally, you are the long snapper. You have one job, and you failed at it colossally 4 times.
Do you remember the Mississippi State Louisiana Tech game where it kept going backwards? Was that a long? Did it go over? It went over the quarterback's head, right? Didn't it go over?
Yeah, and it just kept going.
And it just kept going backwards and ended up being I think it touched. What was it? No, it ended up being like 3rd and 80 or something because it kept going back. Yeah. That's crazy. Man. Well, what do you think ultimately happens? Do you think Fred Taylor is do you think he eventually gets in, Jarrett?
He might. Like, we've seen like the Hall's gotten like a little bit more lenient with whom they let in recent years. Like, I think Terrell Davis is a Hall of Fame talent, and I think that's kind of how he got in, because if you look at numbers, like overall career numbers, he probably doesn't get there, but he had a 2,000-yard season. His accolades in his brief career spoke for themselves. Like Kurt Warner getting in, I wouldn't have put Kurt Warner in if I'm being perfectly honest. Like I think Frank Gore will get in. I wouldn't put Frank Gore in. Like I think Fred Taylor is in the Hall of really good. I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame.
I think if you're putting in Frank Gore, you got to put in Fred Taylor before.
I agree with
think
that.
There's any universe where
I can get on board with that. Like I don't think either of them should be in, but if you put in one, you should put in the other.
The way I'll put it is this. Fred Taylor is 17th on the all-time rushing list. Everybody above him, outside of Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore, is a Hall of Famer.
And Adrian Peterson will absolutely be a Hall of Famer.
Adrian Peterson is going to be a Hall of Famer.
First ballot.
Fred Taylor should be a Hall of Famer.
The thing with me about Frank Gore is like everybody will point out that he's like 4th all-time in rushing. Like he played forever. Like if you play long enough, you're going to pass some people.
That's the reason why he should get it. Running backs don't play a long time, man.
Yeah, that's great and all, man. But like
Frank Gore played like 20 seasons.
I have a take on this.
That longevity should be respected. It's like
what's the take?
AC Green.
Oh,
in the NBA, like consecutive games leader, all-time leader in games played. Frank Gore's gonna.
I have a bias because I was always annoyed about the people who got the perfect attendance in school. Like I thought that should be a frowned upon. I think that should have been a suspension for the following year, because that means you came to school sick and you got other people sick.